Good evening then, Langford CCTV. Sorry to come at you. Just to confirm, Langford did win the game. Due to the fact I'm an incredibly poor photographer, I didn't capture the winning moments because I was just too engulfed in the game, but it went right down to the last ball. They needed, well, it's a very confusing one. Off the last over they needed 10 to win, and then off the last ball they needed 1 to win. To win on, they would have got the draw, but they would have won on the amount of wickets that had fallen, which would have meant they would have won. But then they decided to try and take a second run, in which we then ran them out. So therefore, they lost more wickets than we did to end up winning the game. No one really knew what was going on. Someone did film the last ball, so I'll attach that to the video because that is utter carnage. But we've got the chairman, Tom Stevens, here, who is pretty keen to tell us about it. But I just want to know, generally, first of all, I just want to give me your thoughts about how the game played out and how much this means, this win, because this is a huge win, probably the biggest win in the club's history. We move on into the semi-finals of the VKO and everyone's absolutely over the moon. So just talk to me about your thoughts and about the game and the significance of the win and how buzzing all the boys are.
Davo, fantastic game. Any game that goes down to the final ball, whether it be a Sunday friendly, a competitive league fixture or a big cup game, is exciting. I think this blew us out the water a little bit. It was a good game. Downs littered with incredible players from top to bottom. Thought they bowled really nicely. It was a good toss to win on their part. They bowled some nice areas. They've got a really cracking youngster who opened up and ended up hitting a load of runs at the end. But they bowled really nicely. I think we did well. I think we had a really clear picture of what we wanted the innings to go like. And whilst there was some terrible plays and misses from Jez and mainly myself, we always had a vision of where we wanted to be by the end of it. 180 plus was the vision that we kept talking about. And the acceleration from Corty was fantastic. It was clear when Downs came out to bat that the pitch was just not an easy pitch to bat on. There was a lot of nip, but I think the bowlers, outskilled the batsmen in many ways. Bicker and Ali from the top had their openers in knots. And then the rest of the game, the rest of Downs' innings, it was all about match management. And I think I was surprised by how they lacked in that department, if I'm brutally honest.
Well, the game management side.
Yeah, fantastic players. Far more skillful than the likes of me and the rest of our middle order. But they just don't. They didn't seem to understand. Didn't seem to structure the run chases as fluently as they might have liked. So amazing. And then we got down to the last over, and as Dave says, they needed 10 off the last, and off the last ball they needed 1 to draw, 2 to win. But if they'd have drawn, they'd have actually won by wickets felled, and they clearly didn't understand this, and it all just kicked off, and no one really knew what happened. But what a day for the club! I mean, we ended up coming out victorious in an absolute nail biter, and I could not be more over the moon. We've played a lot of fixtures over the last sort of 3 years. We've tried always to hold our heads up and represent the club in terms of kind of facing the Oxfordshire circles, despite the fact we play in the Gloucestershire leagues, and I'm absolutely delighted.
I say that as probably the one thing that makes this the most special is that obviously this is a huge game. We've played these guys a few times and we know what they're about. They're a very good side, but aside from them, it almost feels like a lot of the time when we play those big games and it goes down to the wire, it's really close. It feels like more often than not we're unfortunately on the losing end of that. So I think that's why this makes it a lot more sweeter, just to get that win in those circumstances, because then it almost feels like a much bigger sense of sort of achievement. And credit to them, obviously I don't want to downplay us that much, but their bowling attack was, they've got some good bowlers, they're pretty nippy. And I think what was great to see is that when I rocked up today and it was 10 overs gone, we were like 25 for 1 of 10. I like how you and Jeremy Kirby didn't necessarily let that go to heads, thinking we need to play some stupid shots here to try and get a lot of runs. It was a pretty maturely played innings from the top order, absolutely. But then it kind of seemed like it was going to derail. We had a couple of things that didn't go our way. But then what was really great to see is when we got out into that field, it felt like we were on top the whole way through, even though we weren't actually necessarily on top throughout the whole game. And just the energy, I feel like, and made it feel like we were on top. And I thought that was very good. So that is fantastic. I'm trying to think what other notable moments there were, or talking points, or...
We had some absolutely fantastic, outstanding performances. Ali Main, thought he bowled beautifully. He bowled at the top. Yeah, they must have played and missed at least 50% of the deliveries. Had them in knots, and he came back at the end and bowled really well. I think another standout performance. Sinners every week goes under the radar, bowls some crucial middle overs for bugger all runs. But Fran Bradley, he's been working his way into the first team for some years. Had a rough ride, but asked to bowl at the toughest times. Asked to bowl at the toughest times, particularly at the end. Got pumped for a few sixes, good shots, in an environment that he wasn't familiar with. And he came back and bowled the last ball.
Especially I'll just say, his penultimate over, when it was looking, I think of the last 5 or the last 6, they needed 10 and over, and then Francis Bradley unfortunately went for about 17 runs on his penultimate over, and the nerve that it took for him to then, I credit to like Spadge, obviously he's got faith in him. He kept him on to bowl that last over and bowled it very well. I mean, they hit 4, but then other than that, everything was solid. And the last ball, so then the nerve to be able to attempt a Yorker and then actually execute it was unbelievable. And I think he needs some huge credit for that, especially after he must have been very nervous after going for 17 on that penultimate over, don't you think?
Absolutely. I mean, I don't think he bowled any bad balls. I think he was probably unfamiliar with the plan. He bowled a bit straighter than he might have liked. And the guy hit him down the ground really well. But ultimately, it went from a hit the wide line every ball for his last 4 overs to bowl some magic deliveries in the last 3 deliveries the whole game. And it came down to essentially 2 to win, 1 to draw, but the draw got them over the line. And Franny bowled a Yorker. He could have arguably fielded it off his own bowling and just called it a day there and then, but the carnage ensued afterwards as they took 2, etc. But
oh my gosh,
what a ballsy delivery! He dropped a catch in his caught and bowled. I think just 12 balls earlier, and I think. I doubt the bloke would have played cricket again if Downs had won, but what a fucking ball. Held his head up. He was leading the attack at the end. He's a bloke who's flitted between the ones and the twos, and he's no doubt takes loads of confidence from that. And we move on to the next round. Here we go.
Sort of definitely touch on the bizarre circumstances in which the game was won, because there will be a video attached to all this which shows the reaction on the last ball. Half of us didn't know if he'd won, half of us thought we won, half of us didn't think we did, and that is obviously extremely strange in a cricket match. But I just want to get your thoughts, because I obviously wasn't playing, but you were in the game, and you said that you knew that if they'd taken 1 run and stayed for the 1 run, they would have won based on the amount of wickets had fallen and the fact that they were ahead on the run rate after the 20 overs. But do you think that most people weren't aware of that? And do you think, when they went for that second run and then we obviously got the run out, did you know instantaneously that had meant that we'd won the game, or were you actually quite doubtful? Because I know that I was definitely doubtful. In the video you might see I'm stood there with my hands on my head, not really knowing what's going on, but there's other people running on the pitch. I don't know what to do. It's bizarre. Give me your thoughts on what you thought was actually unfolding in front of your eyes on that last ball.
Davos, to start things off, it was carnage, right? So they had 189 runs off 39.5 overs. They were chasing 190 runs set by us. There was little awareness amongst all 22 players as to what the rules were.
Yeah.
The key boiled down to what were the rules. If the scores were level, what were the rules? The rules were whoever lost the least wickets during their batting innings would win the game. We were both on 7 wickets.
Yeah.
On the when the 39.6 ball was due to be bowled, we were 7 wickets down apiece. But they crucially were ahead at 20 overs during their innings compared to our innings. So if we were level on wickets, it went down to who was ahead at 20 overs, and it was Oxford Downs by 3 runs.
Yeah.
And there was a poor understanding amongst the players. I tried to explain to my brother Harry, who was the skipper of the side. He was having absolutely none of it.
I did definitely remember that moment. You two were hurling a lot of words at each other on the last ball of the over. You were both shouting at each other, and I was like, "Oh no, what's going on here? This is bizarre." But evidently, you needed to have that conversation with him, and he's probably very glad that you did. And because you said to me earlier that it was pretty well, you thought that he didn't really want to hear what you actually had to say at the time.
100%. I mean, the irony of it is we were trying to get the rules from the scorers, and the scorers were based around the Oxford Downs team, and we didn't want the Oxford Downs team to know the ins and outs of the rules and the setup. And ultimately they clearly didn't know that 1 run would have won them the game. And that actually, they went for the second run, and that's when we absolutely Kool-Aid their wickets on that second run, and they lost the game. But carnage on so many fronts. Spanish didn't want to listen to me. No one truly understood what was going on. But that was absolutely phenomenal. Yeah. I was, Corty's underarm to me. We just took the wickets out. It was really tight run out, but. Yeah. What a day.
What was funny is that Corty definitely didn't know what was going on. He would just gave you the ball, and suddenly he's like, he didn't know what it meant. And he was just stood there like, I'm just giving them the ball. He's taking the wickets off. He's giving them out. Oh, but he probably still thinks we've lost, or it was a draw, but we've actually won. So yeah, all in all, I'd say it was definitely as a spectator, it was a fantastic game to watch. I felt incredibly nervous throughout, but I just wanted, if there's any Oxford Downs members watching this, I'd like to thank you all for coming down, giving us a quality game. It's always great when we play you guys, even though it's obviously turned into a bit of a rivalry over these couple of years. But I mean, we love it when you come down. It makes for a great atmosphere. We all get incredibly involved. We all love it. I mean, you guys have beat us a couple of times. We've now got that win, which means a lot to us, but we do always love playing you guys. It's always a great spectacle, and it was great to have all the supporters from your lads there. Made for just a good atmosphere. It was fantastic. So thank you for Oxford Downs for doing that. But all the best in the future. But obviously we are the ones proceeding to the VKO semi-final, mate. So I don't know who we're playing. Either is it Horsepath or Ensham? Is it? Yeah. So that'll be the next fixture. So yeah, fantastic. Any last words from you, Steve? Anything to say? Anything to add before we cut off?
Dave, building on your words, absolute pleasure to play against Oxford Downs. It always gets spicy in parts, but ultimately, I think it's played in the right atmosphere, despite some kind of temporary boil over moments on some people's watches. But thanks for coming down. We a lot of respect for the club, some great players, great support, and doing a lot of great things. We can't wait to see if we can get into the final, and the next round is key for the club. So can't wait. Bring it on in 2 weeks.
Fantastic. Right, that's it from everyone here. But yeah, tune in, and I'll be back with some more VKO action, lads, in a bit.